copywritten production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.
2 o'clock, try to start on time. Phones off, please. Or vibrate or something so that we don't have interruptions. In case you don't know who I am, I'm not one of the co-chairs. I'm Jane Taunton, the communication coordinator for SAC. Our co-chairs are all out of town. So we're going to have some presentations today. And let's see if I can find my sheet. We're also having, by the way, for any of you who don't see all the inner workings that I send out to these poor people who I feel sorry for sometimes, we are going to be able to continue to hold our meetings in this room.
Yeah. Way to go, Gene.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't?
Thank you. I'll take credit.
Take the credit.
Take the credit,
Yeah.
okay. And then we will be having presentations next Friday from John Fast, Tom Trepanier, and depending on how much time we have today, if we don't have enough time, Bill Loslow will be giving his. And then the following week is going to be the committee will be brainstorming themselves, led by one of the committee members. So that should be interesting. And you should bring your questions and answer your questions. Not your answers. Okay. Now are these lights, do they need to go down a little bit? You're good? Okay. So today we have Norm Dixon, Paul Higgins, Rick Hanna, Dave Clausen, and if we have time, Bill Loslow. They're supposed to be about 20 minutes and then questions after.
Gene, are the committee members willing to stay a little longer if things run a little long? Is that permitted?
We were a little longer once before.
You mean longer after?
After the time, after 4.
After the 2-hour meeting or during the session? Longer than 20 minutes?
Presentations, you said they take a little longer. All I'm asking is how the committee feels about staying a little longer to get in the information.
Yes. Yeah, I see yeses.
You see yeses, okay.
Yes.
So
I will not be here though because I'm leaving at 4:30. I have to be home. I promised my husband because I wasn't even supposed to
we'll
be here
get you
today.
home, and we'll probably be done before 4:30.
So I'll just wave as I leave.
The one day they want to go over.
Yeah.
One more time, right?
Minimal pauses.
All right, 1 to 37, done.
I used to always come up in front of a group with about 30 pages and say, this is going to take a little while. Only the first one had anything on it.
Let's scare people, right?
Everything we do is a matter of perspective. And just a little parody of the fable with the elephant and the blind man. 4 or 5 blind men were assigned a certain segment of the elephant, and from that they were to just tell what the entire animal looked like. So one got the tail, and it was like a snake with some fur on the top. Another one got the trunk, which is a little thicker. Someone got the ear, which is very flexible and thin. And they each described how the animal looked. Now they were each right, but they were all wrong. And one of the things I've learned through life is if you ask the wrong question, you're very unlikely to get the right answer. So with that in mind, next. This is the original settlement of Marinette. Notice the tents in the background. This really was our beginning. Next. A contest to name whatever this development was going to be. Next. Grand Avenue, at some point in time, they had cars in instead of horses. Next. Opening day for the community. Outstanding success. They had cars parked all the way down Grand Avenue. They ran out of sales contracts. They had to go to the dime store and pick up the little carbon copy things that they take when you order something in a restaurant in order to keep up with all the sales they were doing. Next. And the reason they had that sales is because in Florida they were promising you, selling you swampland, promising you everything, and then you got nothing. They just skipped town. This is the aerial shot of Oakmont Center. And there's Oakmont Center. There's the 5 homes, model homes, so they can see what they get. The golf course is finished and up. The amenities were there before Del Webb sold any homes, and he continued that throughout. Next. I suppose you have one of these in your home.
But I've seen one.
I took it out.
Next. If you don't have that, you may have the next one. Here's an indoor pool for you. So things change as it goes through our history here of 63 years. Okay, next. This is a common site because the 95 ranchettes that are in section 1 were for horses. They had corrals and barns and the whole shop. Nowadays, they've got antique cars in them.
Right.
Okay, next. Sun Bowl. It's interesting to see the large crowd there because they used to have big time entertainers. But look at the houses in the background. You're looking towards the fairway thing. Houses for as far as you can see. Next. This is in 1970, June. See any houses up in this area?
Nope. No.
Nothing. Just the beginning of phase 2. This is Oakmont Center down here. You had Lakeview and you have Dawn Lake. We're in the middle of a desert, folks, and we have 2 lakes. Next. Chamber of Commerce puts out a lot of information about how great and ideal our climate is. But you remember John had us do a little exercise that basically said, trust but verify. Next. So I went and got from 2006 to 2008 the average wind speeds for outside. It is well over 10 miles an hour, the average wind speed. You do any sports outside, you notice that wind. Next. This is the best I could do for temperatures. This red area is uncomfortably hot temperatures. The dark green area is uncomfortably cold temperatures. These little faint areas of yellow, those are the ideal temperatures that the Chamber of Commerce tells you that we have. We just don't have that. So, next. So, figuring that didn't sound very good. I went and looked at from November 19, April 2019 to April 2020, there's 181 days. And out of that 181 days, 129 started at 50 or below. Now I've got a friend that plays an outdoor sport, and he didn't show up one day. The next day I saw him, and I said, where were you? And he said, when I get up in the morning and it's colder outside than my refrigerator, I'm not going out. And that's what this turned out. I figured, well, that can't be right, so I did the next year's, 20 to 21, same period of time, 181 days, 127 of those. That's over 70% of the days that are too darn cold for us people to get out. Not what the Chamber of Commerce tells us. Okay. Next.
Are you trying to convince us to move?
Should show the realtors this.
No, what I'm trying to convince you of is, and this is an aside, you made the comments, now you get me off track, which is easy to do. For years I thought outside sports ought to be outside. That's where they belong. We're tough, we're strong, we can do this stuff, right?
Right.
Now I'm beginning to think, with the temperatures that we got and the weather we got, and this doesn't include rain, dust, all those other things that interfere with outdoor sport, we ought to be looking at, in order for the younger generation coming in, maybe we ought to be looking to put some outside sports inside. This is what the younger people are going to be looking for. And if we're going to sell homes, we got to look at what they want. Okay, a little bit, we're going a different direction now. Next. The structure of the RCSC is the first thing we have is the Articles of Incorporation, and then we have the bylaws, and then we have rules and regulations. Articles of Incorporation are up top because they're the most important. What we find in the Articles of Incorporation is to establish and conduct general social, cultural, recreation, amusement enterprise for the benefit of its members, and do anything lawful or convenient to accomplish this purpose. We spend a lot of time working on a mission statement. How's that one? Next. Sun City is not a city, it's a non-profit corporation, and I only mention that because that puts us under a whole different set of rules than being a city. Next. What we have here, if I can find the nut, is the responsibility of the directors is to take care of the existing member needs. So this is the big area. That's where we need to be working on. This here cannot be ignored. We've got people moving in. We've got anywhere from 1,500 to 200 homes that's sold a year. That's 1.5 people per home, for a rough number. That's a lot of people moving in every year. So in the director's 3-year term, you multiply that out. That's a lot of new people have come in. Generally, they're younger than us. I know they're younger than me. So, how much money and space and effort should we spend on each of these areas? What are the wisest choices? What is the best balance? That's why we're here. And in the past, it's been members that have had a lot of say in directing things. The directors we elect, because they're supposed to be looking out for our best interests. They don't know our best interests unless we get on these kinds of committees and get active. Next. So let's take a little bit of a look at the Sun City. We have got condos, single-family homes. We've got ranchettes, 95 of them. Those are the ones with the horses. We have 3 phases. Phase 1, which is south of Grand. Phase 2, which is between Grand and Bell. And Phase 3, which is north of Bell. It gives you the number of condos. It gives you the number of single-family homes. And it gives you the total residential. And again, if you multiply those by 1.5, you'll get the approximate population. But I don't think, and Kevin can correct me here if he wants to, but be careful. If you multiply that by 1.5, you'll come out to get the numbers, but I don't think we have exact populations of each phase. And I'm sure we don't have the ages in each phase, and I think those would be good.
That would be good information.
Now, so we got about 26,000 homes. Next. This is the centers, and of course it gives you the years. And I've highlighted the oldest ones. It gives you the acres. This acreage is important because that determines how big a building you can put out. The restricting factor in putting up a new building or changing it is you have to have so many parking places per square foot, and you have to have this wonderful space they call the 100-year flood retention area. I may get to be 100, but I haven't seen a flood yet. And you look at the sizes of the fairway is the biggest, but we've still got 2 others here that are in the 80s. And the biggest population is 319, but fairway is not far behind. And I'll say my statement that I've said before. When we went from 40,000 to 90,000 square feet at fairway, everybody said we're building a Taj Mahal, it's way too much money, we're not going to spend $19 million. You build it and they will come. Fairway now is second in usage. Everybody likes to go to new facilities. And then you have the bad part of the whole thing is we've got over 300,000 square feet on the roof. That means roofing. And that, Kevin will tell you, that's an expensive item. Next. Do we have anything where we can compete with the new shiny retirement communities they're putting out there? We're an old community. I've seen articles. I was on the museum board, and so I got involved in a whole lot of the history of Sun City. I've seen articles in national magazines where they refer to Sun City as God's waiting room. You just go there and wait to die. Now, they have never been here because they would see everybody, all of us, a lot of us, out walking at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they see the numbers for the fitness room and the pools. We're a very active community, but that's not what they put in the national magazines. Next. Yes, we've got low annual cost. Now, I'll tell you right now, that is a blessing and a curse. Next. We've got most member activities for our size. You can talk about down the villages down in Florida, but they've got a huge number. That's a blessing and a curse. Next one. Convenient neighborhood centers. Again, a blessing and a curse, because that's how we ended up with over 300,000 square feet of roof over the building. Next. So what we have, we've got the lowest annual cost, we've got the most member activities for our size, we've got convenient neighborhood centers, and when I say that, people don't think about that. They think of it more as a handicap, because why do we have a pool 3/4 of a mile from another pool? That is a big benefit if you talk to the members. If I want to go to Lakeview and do something, and there's a bunch of people there doing the same activity I don't like, I can go down to Bell and do the same activity. Or I go to another center and do the same activity. So now I'm with people I like. If we didn't have neighborhood centers, we wouldn't have that option. We'd either have to stop doing the activity or go there with a bunch of, as we call them, crabs. So it's a big advantage. It's an expensive one, but it's a big one. And we have a sizable lake. Dawn Lake is private, so we just leave that out of the equation. And folks, that's in the middle of a desert. Lakefront property is valuable, I don't care where it is, but if it's in the middle of a desert, it's more valuable. We have something that no other retirement community that I know of in Arizona has. And we've hidden it for 63 years. And we'll get to that a little bit later. But if we're going to continue to attract new people and better serve the members we've got, we need to strengthen those advantages, not weaken them. And that ought to be in the back of our head whenever we're thinking about doing anything, whether it's a theater at Mountain View, or pickleball over there, or volleyball over here, water volleyball. We need to keep in mind the big picture, not just the little things that are big to us. Next. We've done some big projects. We did the Bell Fitness Room and put the first walking pool in the valley. We wanted to do a much longer one, but we found out you had to have a lifeguard every 75 feet or something. We said, that's not going to work. So we did it. And as a member request, it was going to be all the same depth. But some of the members, hey, I'm short, I'm tall, I need water resistance, I don't want water resistance. So we ended up putting 2 different depths in there. And we took a lot of heat for that Taj Mahal idea. But now it's well attended. Everybody goes there. Anybody who's had a hip or a knee operation is in that pool getting therapy with the buoyancy of the water helping them. And the first thing Mountain View or Fairway wanted when we said we're going to do it, my idea was we'd have a special thing at each center. We'd have a walking pool here, an indoor walking track there, and so it's a special thing at each center. No, Fairway said we want a walking pool too. So now they got a little walking pool and they got a little inside one. But that's all right. Next. We had the collapse of Sundial, and we fixed that. We had to take the insurance company to court. They weren't going to pay it. They said it was our back poor maintenance that did it, but Kevin wasn't here then, so we couldn't blame him. So we took them to court, and they paid over 80% of the cost. Next. So then we go to Fairway. We went from 40,000. The reason Fairway got underway was because when we were checking the roofs to see when we were going to have to replace roofs, and the contractor wouldn't let his people go up on Fairway's roofs. It was too dangerous. So obviously we had to make some changes.
And they were Quonset huts.
Yeah, just about. So we went from 40,000 feet to 90,000 feet, and this is what we ended up with. It was, when it came in, it was 19 million, but it finished out at 16 million. I always take credit for that, but People keep mentioning that was a depression and everything went cheap all of a sudden. But I still take credit. Next. Okay, now we're back to this. Same shot that you saw before, of all vacant land. That's what it used to be in 1970. Next. Oh, is there a change on that one? This is Dawn Lake, by the way. The lake view is over here. Couldn't get an aerial view of the other one. You see any vacant land up there? Not a whole lot. It's way off in the mountains. So things have changed drastically in Sun City since the beginning. Next. This is our wonderful lake view. It is a circle. I had to tell you that because I want to show everybody realize it. You look at it. The lake is here.
Right.
You have less than 20% of that building can see the lake.
That's right.
Now, who in the world would ever put a building up on a lake and not be able to see the lake? And people say, well, we should say this because it's iconic and all this. All of this can see nothing.
Parking lot.
Well, they can't even see the parking lot. There's very few windows on that side. So it's nothing. We have a lake here. Not a pond, not a water feature like Grand with a waterfall, but it is a lake. We have boats on it. I found them call them our Sun City Navy. But we've got people with motorized model sailboats that go out there and race. It's a great facility. We need to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
We can talk about Mountain View being a problem, and it is a problem. But again, perspective. This is going to be the biggest attraction for people to come and buy homes here. It's going to be the biggest attraction, if we do it right, for our members to go there and sit by the lake and have a sandwich or have a restaurant and whatever we put up here. Everything in that new building should look out at the lake.
Right.
That's the real issue. Because if we don't sell homes, we don't get PIF. If we don't get PIF, we don't do anything. PIF is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Next. Lakefront property, next. In the desert, next. Is just invaluable, and for 63 years we've hidden it. Next. We have only one chance to do Lakeview Center correctly. We need to resolve the Mountain View issue and other needs, but not at the expense of limiting the potential to make a new Lakeview Center which cannot be matched by any other community in the valley. I don't care how new it is, because people don't make lakes anymore. Next. We must resolve the need for a performing arts center. It's there, we've got to resolve that. We need more space for the new interests, in particular volleyball, pickleball, a few others. We can find those places. We get creative, we can find them. We need to replace Mountain View. We need to replace all the old centers. I know people say, well, they got buildings in Europe that have been going for 400 years. Well, they need to go look at our buildings, because they are not made out of granite 4 feet thick. But those are the buildings that are existing in Europe for 400 years. Ours are stick. And every time we tear something apart, we find dry rot or termites in the wood. Now we use metal studs. Think back to what was the technology when these buildings were put up compared to what is it today. Think about the waste, because we got a lot more efficient things we can put in the buildings and keep them cool. We need to resolve these issues in a financially sound manner, and we can do that. We have money. We need to fix the present while planning for the future, and that's not an easy task. Next.
That's it. It's your last slide.
That's it. Who's complaining about me having 36 slides and I wouldn't get it done?
37.
37.
And you're
Okay,
just
so-
You're just a little over 20, so.
But remember, I got that 10-minute grace
That's
period.
right.
I have one closing statement to make. Based on what you've seen there, and based on my 130 years in Sun City, my conclusion now, and this may change in the next 2 meetings, but it seems the solution that disrupts other facilities the least, can be completed quicker and keep costs within reason, meets current needs, is the one we should recommend. We have to first decide on where a new PAC should be, then we can recommend the size. All other issues, large as they may be, can follow. I believe that putting the PAC at Mountain View is the simplest and best and quickest choice to make to get us out of the mess that we're in. Okay, that's it. Questions? None?
No one has any questions?
Well, as we take buildings apart, we'll probably find asbestos and all sorts of other problems that go with tearing down
Yep,
buildings.
we found it in Fairway. Yeah, but you just got to replace things because people like new things. And if you replace
Yeah.
every center with a two-story structure, the second floor is relatively cheap compared to putting it on a single floor.
Well, I agree with that.
And that doubles your space, and we always need more space. That would give us some space to bring some outdoor sports in, or provide more space for the newer activities. There's a whole lot of options it gives you. And the last thing any of us want to be, our legacy should not be that we built something too small. Because you can't fix it once it's up. But Fairway has proven that it's hard to build something so big that it can't be full.
So you had mentioned in your presentation that each center maybe have a unique focus to each center. So would you say the focus at Mountain View then would be with the Performing Arts Center, and everything else around it would be auxiliary to it?
I would like to see that, but I didn't get it back in 2000 because once Fairway people saw the walking pool at Bell, they wanted one. And it's hard to say no to the people who are paying the bills. Yeah. And so I would like that idea, but I'm not sure we could ever sell it. But I think, in line of that, I think one of the things that we have to do as an organization, we're sitting in this room and we're pretty well informed. You may not have been when you first came in here, but you're a lot better informed now than you were. We need to get out and inform the general public, the other 38,000 people that are out there who think we can operate without any increase, an annual increase, when the inflation rate is going up by 3-4% a year. You just can't do it. So I think we need to set up a program, we meaning the directors, need to set up a program that goes out on a regular schedule to educate the people. This is a very big, complicated, expensive operation. And it's a great community. I've been here 23 years, and I wouldn't live anywhere else. This is just great, even with all the problems that we've got. But I'd like to have a specialty in each one, but I'm not sure the people are ready for that yet. But I think we need to educate them. The people out there are very talented, very smart, very logical. If you give them the facts, they're going to come down in the middle of the road somewhere. And they're going to understand why there has to be an increase. Or they're going to understand why we need more space. But right now, we've done nothing to educate. But that's an aside.
Hey, Norm, is Lakeview slated for an update?
Lakeview should be the next one on there.
It's not slated though.
And there's
It's not in the
nothing
plan.
official. But
But
we've
that's
hidden
something to look at.
we've hidden it for 63 years.
We gotta do it.
We're getting more and more competition from new retirement communities. If we can get something that they cannot match,
Right.
puts us in a great position for attracting people. Yeah, so for me, it should be the next project, but I don't have any power.
The other thing that happens here is Sun City residents are very driven by rumor.
That's a favorite hobby.
I was asked Wednesday why we sold Lakeview to the hospital.
Oh my God.
I
didn't know.
don't really think so.
We're getting off track.
Off track.
We got a good price, that's why we said.
Thank you, Norm.
All right, no.
Good job.
Please, anybody, if you've got more questions of Norm, I'm sure he would be happy to answer them.
See that, Kevin? 37 slides.
Next,
will be Paul Higgins.
Do you need the laser?
No, I only have one slide.
Okay.
They told me that they were all taken up, so.
By Norm?
Don't say next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Paul Higgins. This is my plan. I'll keep it real short. I don't think we need to start from scratch. I want to keep lawn bowling. Oh, it's got a- sorry, where did I push there? I want to keep lawn bowling.
It's very front.
Yeah, I figured it out, I think, or somebody did for me. Mini golf, the existing pickleball, existing pool, and the parking lot, all basically as is. I want to repair mini golf and update mini golf, maybe some more solar over it for shade. And mini golf usage is up at every other center but down at Mountain View, because it's been closed. I want to add an ADA ramp to the existing pool and enlarge the pool bathrooms for more showers for aqua fitness. And maybe add an ADA bathroom to that also, because people complain about that. More outdoor showers, some shade features around the pool, and maybe some cabanas. Make it a nicer area out there. I want to convert the tennis courts to pickleball courts with a shade area here for them to, with tables and chairs, so that they can gather and set up their matches and whatnot. I don't think there's enough room at Mountain View for everything, so I have no pack at all on mine. I think that Steve and Russ's presentations of moving the pack to the center of the community at Lakeview made a whole lot of sense to me, or even Bell's parking lot if we need something that we can work on faster. I want indoor pickleball courts, as Norm just said, with the weather and all. They make so much sense. Just like our fitness centers where you can go when it's 35 degrees or 115 degrees in the wind and the rain. We give so much more use. I think it would cut maintenance down on the pickleball courts, and it would keep the noise away from the neighbors, which has been a complaint, I guess. Then out where the picnic table area is, out here, I want to build a 2-story fitness building. The top floor would be fitness, overlooking the pool and overlooking the golf course. Survey talks about more good fitness areas like Fairway, Bell, and Marinette. We need one there at Mountain View. And the bottom floor would be locker rooms and the janitorial area where we keep all our supplies and machines that we use to take care of the place. The area between fitness and pickleball is a lobby, or you can actually go inside and check in. And then out in here, I wanted to put a shaded area with some nice tables and a nice gathering area, so we have a social area that's out of the sun. People can meet and talk, do things like that. Maybe some vending machines and misters, make it a nice area. Then I think we need to rebuild this monitor station out at Mini Golf and put a fence along here so that we can actually track who's in Mountain View, and everybody has to check in instead of everybody coming in without checking in. We need more security that way. I want to add an outdoor spa out here in this area so we can have a spa back. And my idea is a therapy pool for people to use. Everybody's always using the handrails of the pool now to do their people rehabbing knees and hips and backs. And we need a place that people can go to do their therapy when aqua fitness is in there, or when water volleyball is at Oakmont. There needs to be an open pool. My vision is to have it something like this, and then have a walking pool feature to it, but in here have lots of handrails and bars and steps that people can use to get in their their therapy, their stuff they need to keep moving.
Paul, is that area there where the old
Solar.
solar is? That's what you're
That's the old
overlaying?
dead
Okay.
solar area.
Okay,
It's useless now, we need to put something there.
yeah.
Right.
And that's about all I really have. Just, we don't need to redo everything, so much of it can be left alone. Is there any questions? Yes?
So if I'm getting this right, you would make Mountain View really an area for people who are physically active that can get in there. Okay.
Yep.
So the other people that live in our community would not really go to this for anything because there's nothing there except outdoor, all kinds of sportsy activity things. So there's nothing for anybody else to go there for.
We have no club activity there now except for,
But you do have a theater there, so
we have,
that's fine.
we have an auditorium there
You
that we
might
use
go
as
to
a
that.
theater.
Yeah.
I'm confused by the question because there's a lot of physical activity in everything that you described.
Right, I think she's saying that it would all be physical activity, there would be no theater or
No
things for
theater.
anybody that's not.
You said you were going to put the pack.
I think it should go to Lakeview, like Russ and Steve presented, or even Bell's parking lot, somewhere other than here. I don't think there's enough room here to expand pickleball and have a decent theater.
The
That's
only thing I
all.
would say about your presentation is you said something about shades over the pool.
Yes,
And what people have said is they do not want shades on the pool, but they were
No,
without
right, well-
objection, they were without objection to shade over the spa.
okay.
They seem like to be out in the sun or something.
Right now, there's umbrellas at each table, little umbrellas. And we go through about 3 a week on those. And if we had some more permanent shades, I think we could get away with that, get away from those little umbrellas and,
Yeah, I'm not taking objection, I'm just sharing. what
yeah,
people
thank you.
said.
Bell has more permanent overhangs on the side of the pool, on the
Yeah.
west side.
Yeah.
That seems to work really well. They're not replacing umbrellas every 3 weeks
Right,
on the one side.
right.
And then they have it over
And then they have the
pool.
sails over the walking pool parts of it only. Those have to be
Right,
replaced.
I think cabanas or maybe some areas where you can go in the shade or get in the sun. I don't want the whole thing shaded.
Right, we're not gonna say it.
Anita?
I think we need to be very careful about shaded areas. The younger generation coming in is a lot smarter than we were when we were in our 20s.
Yeah.
With skin cancer and being here. I know I did all those stupid things and trying
Yeah.
those stupid, not anymore. Kids are a
So
lot more.
I think we need some shaded areas over mini golf and around just areas. There needs to be more shaded areas.
Yeah, and even somewhat over a pool, small area of the pool.
Even
There's
over the
people that want to
tennis,
be in the water.
tennis and pickleball.
Right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about your suggestion that the pack possibly be moved to Lakeview. And on Norm's presentation, where we should, when we start to look at Lakeview, should make that quite a phenomenal facility. You would think that the pack would slide into that ideal, that idea, that would be where you would want your performing arts theater, that you would want it at the place that is going to be the most
That's our.
That's what it makes sense.
visual and stimulating and just the biggest wow for your buck would be at the lake, you would think. And then, and on the flip side of that, I agree with the fact that when you're trying, it almost seems through the meetings that I've sat through that we might be attempting to go with an idea just because it currently exists to get to the finish line that may not be the best long-term for it. And putting the pack here and trying to sandwich it in and then still trying to do things around it might not be the best. And as Norm was saying, that projection of 20, 30, 40 years from now, you're building that for that trying to sandwich a pack in there is going to minimize what else you can do there and
Right.
maybe not be the wow factor
I agree we should have a pack, I absolutely do. But it might not be the wow factor that the pack should be sandwiching it in this small section.
Yeah, I kind of think the opposite on that one. Lakeview, one, we have absolutely no history or any kind of research on Lakeview, whether or not a pack would even fit there for so far as parking availability and all that. So we're kind of flying blind and just saying, oh, let's just throw it over there when we have nothing to show that it will fit there. And two, when, as Norm said, Lakeview should focus on the lake. I don't see the point of putting a big dark theater where you're going to be focused indoors at the lake. To me, the lake should be Lakeview. Everything should be focused toward the lake.
Russ?
That's the reason why I put it in the corner, because it is a sole place to go, a destination place for the theater, but I have all the entertainment going on at the lake. That's why I chose that.
And I totally understand that, except for your again, that's gonna totally kill the parking. You're gonna have a big Lakeview Rec Center, a new one, with more facilities, more need for people to be able to park, and then throw in a huge pack there with, which is gonna take up existing parking. So to me, that's not a win, but that's my view.
If you don't
I
mind,
second that.
I just need to say that we have talked to the architect engineer, and it's 3,500 square feet right now at Lakeview. So clearly, the pack will fit there because our current architect has done a drawing that shows us it will fit there. We would also probably remove the green area, which it takes a lot of care and water.
Right.
It would create probably enough parking spaces to cover the new rooftop area.
Okay.
Just information, that's all I'm saying.
I think too, we should keep in mind, you asked if the Lakeview was on the horizon. I believe it's a placeholder on the PIF plan for less than 10 years away,
2030.
2030.
Right.
So Mountain View's way behind, Lakeview's coming right up. So in a way, someone once said, why is this is a Mountain View committee, not a Lakeview. Well, it kind of marries both. If you, you gotta look at the big picture. You can't just stick in your own boundary.
We gotta look a couple steps ahead.
That's why we have to
It's a
plan ahead.
community process.
Yes. Now, Paul, the one good thing that I saw too is you have. More than
Not
one.
sensitive, but.
Yeah. You have good security there's only 2 access
Right.
points, which is something that our older buildings are not good at.
But right now, there's a whole lot of areas where people just wander in and we don't know that they're there.
Right.
Right.
So we don't get good utilization numbers either.
Question?
I just had a suggestion or something. You talk about the security and 2 access points. What's the real cost of having another monitor station, adding that versus the cost of trying to redesign everything so there's just one entrance? The operational cost still has to factor in over time that, maybe you can at least secure the facility like you're suggesting here with 2 access points, and you're hiring a few extra people to monitor another location. And that has to be factored in versus I'm going to re-architect it, so you got to park here, you got to walk all the way around, you got to go in this one place.
Okay, we're getting a little off topic.
Yeah, off top.
Does anybody else have any questions for Paul?
Question?
On this floor plan, is the existing pack on this map?
No, I've covered it up with pickleball courts.
Okay, so it was there, okay. And how many people can the current theater hold as far as attendees?
Bill, do you know that?
For plays, we never
How many
saw
people?
280 chairs for plays.
280 chairs. No, the current auditorium,
Right.
we put in 500 chairs for one of our musicals. inside Mountain View.
But that's not normal.
Well, they asked how many we can put in there.
That's gotta be true.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
And if I'm not mistaken, Rick is president?
Yeah, I'm president of the swim club here in Sun City. So we currently have about 87 members. There's about 45 of us that are master swimmers, belong to the Star Swim team. We also have right now 32 people signed up for adult learn to swim lessons. We have 4 to 5 instructors that are certified adult learn to swim instructors. And that is the gist of most of our swim club. One other thing that we have is also swimmer's yoga that's run by Karen McLean. A very non-invasive yoga that if you're a member of the swim club, you can come into the yoga. My suggestions for the Mountain View pool area are going to mainly go about the health issues when you try to combine pools. So if we go to the next slide. This is just one we've seen. We see obviously swimming is number 2 as far as user activity in Sun City. It should be the part of any recreation center that we have, in my opinion, because it's right up there with golf and fitness. Next slide, please. Okay, the vision of what I think the pool areas should serve. A resort pool to be configured with the ease of entry and exit, with an ideal temperature range for lounging and light recreation. In a lap pool, no matter how many lanes for a lap pool, it should be a rectangular pool with an ideal temperature range for swimming and water aerobics in this pool. It should be independent of the resort pool, and I'll get to that in the next slides. A water sports pool, primarily for water volleyball, should be rectangular, as flat as possible on the bottom, and fit the requirements for 2 courts. Guys, I don't know if any of you have been to water volleyball when they're participating at Oakmont. It's trying to like wedge 30 people into a small court and try to play volleyball. The ball's bouncing off all the time. I think of anything that the water sports pool is something that for future you should consider, because that is one of the things that people want to do the most, all right? And lap swimming should not be discounted, because lap swimming is also a non-stress on your knees as far as swimming. It's not, it's a active way of therapy, just like a therapy pool would be, only it's cooler. Next slide, please. Okay, recommended pool temperatures. What we found is, when we go through this, it's not a good fit to combine a resort pool with a sports lap pool. A lap pool is too cold for people who want to relax and just get wet. I think we've all seen that. You go into a pool. I mean, if it's Bell Pool, you get more people saying, "Oh my God, this is cold." The different types of activities need different temperatures. And you can see on this, there's 2 ranges, 86 to about 92 in the middle, and then there's 78 to 86 in the other. So when you're looking at pools, you've got to consider that you've got to keep the temperatures at the proper range to keep your swimmers and water sports or aerobics people healthy. That's the main key for doing that. Next slide, please. So what are some of the guidelines? Well, for FINA, which is the international organization, they've got 77 to 82 degrees. In Arizona, it's much hotter. You get near constant full sun exposure onto the pools, so it's hard to keep them cool. From a health perspective, water that is too hot can be dangerous for swimmers of all ages. perhaps even more dangerous for older adults. So what happens is you're swimming hard in warm water. You can't exchange that heat out of your body at all. There's nowhere for it to go. So that opens up your arteries, and all of a sudden your blood pressure drops and you could faint right in the pool. So these are considerations that you do when you say, well, I want to combine and have, you know, the resort pool with a couple of lanes that are open end over here. It's just not a healthy option, in my opinion. Other considerations, when the water gets warmer, it's harder. You have to do more chemicals, more chlorine to keep that pool shocked so that you keep the algae and infectious agents out of there. So, and if you utilize an aerator or even a chiller like we have at Bell, you can control those temperatures a lot more to where your swimmers and aerobics people and people in general are going to be more safer in the pool. Next slide, please. There's other temperature guidelines here. According to the World Health Organization, it should be from 78 to 86 degrees. And that's generally comfortable for and safe for those engaging in moderate physical activity. Now, I can tell you most stars like our pool at about 80 degrees. Most casual lap swimmers like it a little bit warmer. They like it 82, maybe even 83. High aerobic activity in high temperature water can be dangerous. And that's the United States Water and Fitness Association that did that. However, for a resort pool, when seniors in your life are going to use your pool for leisure, you consider raising the temperature to that pool and keeping it right around 86 to 88 degrees. Okay, next slide. Okay, so recommendations if we have a lap pool in the Mountain View area. If you remember, Steve Oakes had said that a lap pool could fit right underneath the derelict solar panels that we have now. There's plenty of room for that. Honestly, I haven't looked at the dimensions of that, so I can't tell if there's room for a therapy pool with it, or if there's a walking area we could put in there. I'd have to look at the dimensions. But for a lap pool, if you put in a 25-meter pool with half the lanes or less that Bell Pool has, without starting blocks, 5 feet deep in one end instead of 6 feet, so you're getting less volume there because nobody's going to be diving off the pool. They're just going to be swimming laps. Temperature control with a chiller and, of course, a heater. And the one thing I want to point out is there's really not a viable lap lanes in the southern part of Sun City. You have Fairview that's got the shorter distance. It's very shallow at one end, very hard to do turns at that end. It's also tied into the walking pool, which you kind of want a warmer temperature range in, but it's kind of too warm for lap pool swimmers in the summer. I can attest to that because when Bell was going through their resurfacing, we went to Fairway and we swam as members of Stars there, and we had to really limit our workouts because it was just too hot. And if you've got individual lap pool swimmers, they don't have somebody on deck coaching them, watching to see what the water temperature is. They're just going to go in there and go. And we could have some people with fatalities if we keep these pools at the higher temperatures they are for lap swimming.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't understand what it means, 1/2 the lanes or less like at Bell. I don't.
Okay, so Bell Pool has 8 lanes.
Okay. Oh, so
Nice,
you're talking,
big. It's actually a USMS sanctioned
Okay.
pool. Many of you may recall we used to have senior games at Bell Pool.
Okay. So four lanes
yeah.
or
4 less, yeah.
4 lanes or
Or
less.
less, okay.
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 So the next slide shows just kind of what it generally looks like, all right? So you're looking at, again, measurements of 25 meters from one end to the other. The little blue lines on top are recessed stairs that go down into the pool, so the stairs don't actually go into a lane line. Lane markings on the bottom of the pool are a little bit thicker than what they normally look like, but it gives you the idea where you see the two T's at the end. That's to stop guys like me from running straight into the wall. Okay? That tells us we're at the end of the lane. Otherwise, if you're swimming like this, you're just dying. It's hard for you to swim that way.
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yep.
That's my time?
You got 10 minutes.
Oh, good. I think I'm doing well. All right, so.
You're doing swimming.
Okay, with between the lane lines, of course, is 7 feet. Again, the depth of the pool, 4 feet at one end, 5 feet at the other. You'll see down at the bottom here, on the next slide, these are all of the dimensions. With a 4-lap lane is 30 feet, 2 lap lanes 50 feet, 3 lap lanes 22.5 feet. The depth of the pool, total gallons. This is important to figure out what kind of system you need to keep the pool cool. So for 4 lanes it's at 83,025, 2 lanes 41,513, and 3 lanes 62,269. Next slide, please. Okay, the other option, if there's just not space and there's just not the room for a lap pool and you know, your resort pool and a sports pool, there is a way to combine them both. The overall design would be rectangular with handicap access at both ends. I kind of took this and took Scott's design on his sports pool and tried to make laps fit into it. So it would serve 2 purposes. I think the way we can do that is you have the designated pool for the water volleyball club. They get priority in scheduling, just like our stars have got 2 hours, 5 days a week at Bell. I think Scott, he's got 4 hours for 3 days, and he's looking for more time because he's got more members. Okay? Swimming lane width is 7, proper bottom and wall lane markings, just like for the lap pool. Detachable backstroke, pole and flags, at 5 meters from the end walls for the 25-meter pool. Backstroke flags hang a minimum of 6 feet. I mean, these are all just requirements, but the key is that the removable items are the lane lines and the backstroke flags should be removable. Proper equipment to maintain a temperature between 79 and 85 degrees. That's pretty much the temperature we're at Bell Pool. We started out pretty chilly for the swimmers in the morning, and as it gradually gets older, longer in the day, that temperature goes up. And so it's more comfortable for people that just want to hang in a lane and talk with their friends. Okay, let's see here, next slide. Okay, so this is kind of what it would look like. You can see the handicapped entries. You see the 2 lane lines here, 2 lane lines here. Because of the entry, there's no lane line in the middle. That's just kind of an open space for water. You see 2 water volleyball courts, one here, and then this is your gray area or buffer zone, so they're not slamming into each other, you know, and they've got a safety factor. Okay, you see the ladders on the side. Again, those would be recessed, just like the ones at Bell. Next slide, please. These are the measurements that we talked about, pretty much the same, with the exception that the pool would be about 98 feet with the handicap accesses at the end. I didn't have time to kind of reconfigure where the one would be at a side or take just one, but this is just taking what the sports pool wants and trying to combine the lap pool with it.
Do you know what the current length of the sport pool that they have scheduled, on our?
Oh, I think it was 30 by 60 feet. Or it could have been longer, right? It's 30 feet wide, I know that, so that's where we combined in that. Actually, I think it was 78 feet long is what John Fast told me was his configuration. So we're going 10 feet extra to get the lap lanes in there on that. So the only thing that you really have to watch out for is if you go back to that one slide, back one slide, please. These walls right here, that's the walls that the lappers are going to be pushing off of. So you have to make sure those can withstand somebody flipping over or turning over and pushing hard off the wall. They just can't be a, kind of an easy partition. It's got to stand the test of time. Okay, we go to the next one. And then, one back.
You skipped one.
Yeah. Oops, let's see, that's the measurements. Okay, 11, we've seen that. That's the measurements, there we go. Pool equipment, course heaters and aerators. I really emphasize a pool chiller for a lap pool or a sports lap pool. Again, the warmer the temperature, the more chemicals are needed to control bacteria and algae, and the harder the health list. Think about it. You've got RCSC exercise rooms at 68 to 70 degrees. You do that because it's healthier for the people working out. You need to consider that when you're looking at that for swimming pools as well. Regardless of what type of exercise they do, you've got to make sure that they're not overeating. That's the most important thing. So, next one. Next slide. Okay, these are just pictures of what the lane lines actually look like at Bell, and with the proper markings, and then you can see the square that's on the walls, that's the target for turning. And then the next picture. These are the rollers that you would roll up the lane lines with. Each one of these can hold up to 5 of them. There's only 4 lane lines that are 25 meters long on this. They are very easy to move around. Kids do it all the time at some of the bigger pools that they have swim teams on. I've seen them do it. It takes about 15 minutes to pull all the lanes off from an 8-length pool. So I'm saying 15 minutes to take lanes out and take lanes in. It's not that difficult. It's just that it would be one more thing that either RCSC has to do or the Water Volleyball Club. All right, next slide. Pool chillers. This is a Glacier pool chiller. It's a little bit smaller than the one we have up at Bell, obviously, because we got a big pool up there. So this one is actually designed for 80,000 gallons of water. Its estimated cost just for the pool without installation is about $9,000. So it's not that much to assure that you've got the proper temperatures in the pools that you're looking at. Okay, I think that is my last one.
Outstanding.
How'd I do it?
Outstanding.
All right. Questions?
I have a comment or a question. You have taken the time to educate us about the pool.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting into where or what.
Well,
anything
yeah,
should go.
my most important thing is for you to consider when you're doing these pools is make sure you don't try to combine activities with the same water temperature. It really doesn't work. Yeah.
4-foot depth, does that work well for the water volleyball people as well?
Yeah, it's the width of the pool is 30 feet is what they want. So that water volleyball court is probably going to have maybe 1 to 2 feet on the edge of where they put their lines. They always throw them in the water, if you've seen that. So there's borders, and then all the players stay inside those borders. And a water volleyball, if it goes out of that border, it's out and the point is scored.
And to what Gene said, I think on the current plan for the water thing, if we remove the 2 laps off of the
Yes.
resort pool, it leaves room for us to extend off of the
That's
resort
what I believe.
pool,
Yeah.
leaves room for us to extend the length on this and still leave room for people to maneuver between the pools.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, how many laps would you want?
Yeah.
In a perfect world,
Yeah.
not my own personal opinion.
Your own personal opinion.
Okay, so 4 would be perfect, I think. 4 would be nice. It's a challenge within the confines of what you're talking about, I believe.
Are you recommending shared use with water protocol?
It can be done. I honestly think the better solution, and it's a little more expensive, but as to what was presented by Norm, you've got to think about what people wanting coming in. And there are more and more people wanting to exercise in the water with lap pools because they can't run anymore. They can't play basketball. That's the reason I got into it. Yes.
I'd like to speak up for that. I'm not on the swim team in that, but I swim it up. I work out. I do laps for a workout. The conflict of interest that happens all the time, I think it's great. We need more lap pool work. Part of the reason I understand now, people are bringing toys and everything and walking in the lanes where they take up the same time that a lap swimmer should be in there. They won't go to the walking pool, but they now want to sign in for any lane. And from what I understand, RCSC management now allows people to do anything they want in the lanes for the lap swimmers.
Well,
so the lap swimmers are constantly being moved around, and we don't have many choices to go.
Yeah. What time of the day do you usually like to swim?
I swim after the swim team's done, but I also have gone into the afternoons and later.
Okay.
And what I found is they're now able to bring their noodles of any length they want to just float around in the lanes. They're not even walking the lanes.
So right now,
can you imagine that? They're not even walking.
I've seen it. They're right, and I have no problem if those lane lines are empty. If they got a half an hour and they want to sit in the middle of the lane and just do it, I think they got that right.
That's what I found
if they
out.
can stand the water temperature, that's the thing. I don't think it's fair for them
I was told they
to
changed
expect it to be
that.
higher.
It wasn't that way before.
Yeah.
Since I moved here, I'm told it's changed.
Okay, all right,
All right,
we're
that's
drifting a
something.
little. We got a couple more questions.
One more?
What's the opinion on whether the lap pool or sports pool should be shaded or not?
Well, I'd love to see it shaded. I'm
Just saying.
yeah,
My sister's a
I would
swimmer.
love to
She's
see
not
it
on a swim
shaded.
club. She's not in that.
That
And I hear
helps.
about her, in fact, she
Right.
goes to, when there's shade, when
We-
she goes to Fairway.
We've seen a lot of
It's too
shaded
hot
pools
later on
going
in the
up
day.
now. YMC Goodyear is a real good example of how they shaded their pool.
Okay.
All right.
Because you didn't mention.
The lady over there has a question.
Who is it?
Hi.
Oh, there she is, yes.
I just wanted to add a couple comments because I'm a swim for fitness as well.
Uh-huh.
I live a block from Mountain View. I drive to Bell.
Okay.
I drive. It's the only place you can swim
Right.
laps. And in the summer, people are fighting over those laps. You know, when
Yeah.
the snow,
Right.
in the winter rather than the snow goes are here.
So we do need something in the south side of Grand for lap pool swimmers, in my opinion.
Do you think scheduling would help some of the
No.
pool noodles and all that? No, that's not gonna
Well,
help.
we've tried a lot of things. Bell has designated one lane for Bell, but they always tend to get, if it's empty, why not move over?
Yeah.
You know? Yes.
Why is Mountain View's pool used for swimming now, for lap lanes? They have 2 lanes.
They're too short and too warm.
They're 100 feet long, they're longer than Bell's.
Well, are you sure that you're thinking late, Sundial?
Mountain View,
Mountain View?
length of the pool is 100 feet.
And the length
of the pool
is longer, that's right.
Well, it'd be too warm.
People at Mountain View, they just use the lanes for recreation. So I gave up trying to go to Mountain View to swim.
But if you sign in for half an hour, you get that, I mean, they're only going to be in there so long.
No, that's not the reality.
I think that's really important.
We're getting off track.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
You mentioned that the chiller runs $9,000 for the chiller itself. What what's the cost of running it?
That's a question for RCSC. I did not research that. So I couldn't tell you what's the cost of running air conditioning. You know,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's something that I think is a necessity more than it is an option.
Totally agree.
It's a health issue, it's a
I swear.
necessity, yeah.
Well, I have to admit, I had no idea all the complexity involved with the temperatures, et cetera, because we have all these great pools, and it sounds like there's people fighting for time and space to do their own thing.
Right.
And then the water also has to get the correct, good
So
temperature.
I spent 12 years working with the American Aquatic Educational Association, which is international, and there are strict guidelines to the temperatures of different activities in the pool. I think as a community, we're lucky no one's had a heart attack in our pools, and there would have been sued dynamite, because the range of temperatures, from my point of view, in certain pools, totally inappropriate for some of the things we do in them.
Well, we say you can do it.
It's good to know.
Well, and the other thing I noticed is there's a lot of people who like to walk and talk.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Just-
And I don't want to take that away from anybody. I mean, that's why we have resort pools. We are a resort community, right? And I've only been here for 5 years, but I'll tell you what, this is fantastic. It's a fantastic community. And we may have some warts here and there, but by golly, I'm very proud of the Sun City community.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a couple minute break, and then if any of you guests have come in and didn't see the sign-in sheet, there's a sign-in sheet over on the card table, if you would please sign in. And now we have Dave Clausen.
Yeah,
Jeanette
good. Dave.
Jones.
I've got this clicker and I think I can probably do it, right? It doesn't work?
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work, okay.
But you can point.
But this does. Okay. So I get a point. All right, so I'm Dave Clausen. I'm the president of the tennis club right now. So the first slide said that we're looking for win-win and wow solutions. And I like some of the things that we were talking about today. The wow, the lake is going to be a wow if we get that part done. Now, next slide. This is a copy from that I took of Susan's presentation last week. This is your modified, copyrighted, right?
Yeah, of course.
So this is my kitchen table right there.
That's your table there. Why didn't you just grab it right off Susan's?
Yeah, because this was easier. So what I liked about this, what I thought about it, obviously tennis is a different sport than pickleball. We're brothers and sisters. We're the big brother, I think. They're the little sister that are multiplying around the world. But, so pickleball and tennis are kind of together in the facilities. Already, 2 of the tennis courts were converted to pickleball courts here. We have 2 tennis courts presently that are at Mountain View, and they aren't used as much, partially because they haven't been maintained well, and one reason too is that our motto in the tennis club, and I think it's much for the whole Sun City, is that we're a retirement community. We're friendly. We're social. You want a center where you can have a bunch of people together. At Bell Center, we have a great center up there, and we do tennis every morning, and it's drop in, and we have a lot of good people. We got 10 people, or 10 courts there. So one thing I wanted to say about Susan's, I like the idea of having an indoor, and Nora mentioned bringing more things, outdoor activities indoors would be a useful thing to focus on. And so this area right here, not just pickleball, I'd focus on a dual tennis and pickleball. Now, let's go to the next slide. We'll just talk a little bit about our wants
That
and
was
wishes.
cute. Throw it away.
Yeah, throw it away, right? So this is, we aspire to have fun, friendship, and exercise. That's the tennis club's motto. We gratefully acknowledge we have a fine tennis center at Bell Center. It is state of the art. We acknowledge the growing popularity of pickleball. And we acknowledge the need for more pickleball courts and want to assist the pickleball club and the RCSC board to find and build additional pickleball courts without converting the remaining courts at Mountain View and Lakeview. Now, there could be some negotiation, and if we could get some indoor climate-controlled tennis courts, we would give up Lakeview if we could get that somewhere else. But right now, Lakeview, I'm going to show you. Go ahead, next one. Okay. Here are a couple of tennis club members' wants and wishes. Valid reasons, I think we just talked about that. Valid reasons that Mountain View and Lakeview tennis courts have not been utilized fully. Until just a couple of months ago, the Mountain View courts were so dirty and not maintained, and there's no shade anywhere. And I caught one of the guys and asked, well, how come these are so dirty? He says, well, they're not on the schedule to clean.
Really?
The Mountain View tennis courts were not on the schedule to clean, probably because the word is out that nobody plays there, so why clean them? So, so that's not so good. Quality awnings to cover courts and sitting space. We just talked about that in relative to the pools. Awesome. Having sails over some of the tennis and pickleball courts. That would make it easier to play. During the hot months, you would extend. Right now, pickleball players and tennis players probably finish at 9 in the morning, 9:30, because it's so hot.
That's right.
If you had awnings over there, they could maybe extend or have some shorter periods later on in the day, even in the heat of the day. So, resurface Lakeview courts if it is confirmed that the PAC will be at Mountain View and before Lakeview renovation plan puts everything on hold. That's one of the problems. They didn't repair Lakeview because things were just on hold. And Lakeview courts have cracks in them big enough that they're safety hazards. And there's a lock and chain on the access to the door from the parking lot. So it's like, well, we don't play tennis there because it looks like it's. You want me to keep going? I only have 17.
I want you to go faster.
Okay.
A little bit faster.
So we're seeking win-win and wow solutions. Next slide. Okay, and here I'm just going to show you briefly what we have right now. So the presence of tennis courts at Sun City. We've got Bell Center, we have 10. State-of-the-art flagship site in Sun City. We already talked about Lakeview. We have 4 there, but they're not used, but very rarely. And Mountain View, we have 2. And so Mountain View, and they haven't been maintained and they're not clean. I went personally they have a ball machine there, and we do have people in the club that use the ball machine there. But I went there a few months ago, and the balls were so bad. So bad that I brought a whole construction bag of balls from Bell Center to replenish the one because it's just it wasn't maintained.
And I don't know if you're not a tennis player, to hit a ball machine with dead balls is actually, can create elbow and shoulder issues. It's actually detrimental to your arm to hit dead balls.
And the fuzz was even off the balls. They were so so, I mean, it was really bad. Okay, next one.
This thing cracked.
All right. So this is an overview of our present center, and honestly, it is really, really cool. Right over here, actually you don't see it, but we have a grandstand that is there. It doesn't have a shade over it. We've got a wonderful canopy right here, and you see that we've got shade and a bench on either side for either court here at each of those courts. So this is a great center. We love it. Thank you, Sun City, for providing that. Next slide. All right, so even though we're not talking about Bell Center renovation, I'm going to quickly go through here. So we're talking about bringing courts, outdoor activities inside. So we have a desire to cover 3 or 4 courts with high quality awnings like the canopy I just showed you. Oh, and this is a small, simple thing. Install an ice machine. I've had so many people ask me for an ice machine out there. We've got we got 3 water fountains out there in that facility. If we just put an ice machine there, we'd have a lot of happy people. Next slide. Okay, so this one is Lakeview. And like I said, right here, there's an entrance that's locked. These 4, I think this one might be just a little bit smaller than the other courts, but, and I understand that this used to be the area for the vintage car. And so that area, if I understand it correctly, really is not being used and could be expanded to do something at some point.
Are they still using it?
Wait, keep going, Dave.
Okay, next slide.
Sorry, keep going, sorry.
So it's important, I mean, Mountain View is the focus, but tennis at Mountain View, if that is not going to be part of it, then we need to, this group needs to say, okay, we've got to put tennis somewhere else. All right, so repair and resurface, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so here is this is a overview of the present Mountain View. Last week we showed, Susan showed her idea of expanding and having, I think, 23 pickleball courts, which I think is great. I thought that, like I said earlier, that we could do an inside climate control. Now, just this morning, well, this afternoon, before I came over here, I went and actually measured by my foot pacing the size of the auditorium, thinking that if we could pull 3 or 4 pickleball courts inside, and I was hopefully looking to get 1 tennis court inside there, that we could facilitate getting more tennis and pickleball without tearing down a building, still with the ability to have the pack in there in the plan that you had. So that was a thought. This tennis court, the playing area, is about 5 foot too narrow here. So it actually isn't quite the size to put 1 tennis court in there. But next slide. That was a thought. So that was, yeah, you can go to the next slide because that's the same thing. So preferred option to create a dual tennis court pickleball climate controlled facility in whatever version of this, knocking down the building and building a new one. My idea of that, Susan, what would be at the top, I think you had the pickleball courts and the fitness center were to be adjacent to each other. My thought there was for a wow factor, to have the top floor, put a walking, Steve talked about walking paths, like fairway, put a nice walking path right along the top with windows facing out so that you could see the whole, over the mini golf, over the lawn bowling, over the pickleball, over the pools. It would be, I think that would be a wow. We don't have a lake there, but we've got that. Next slide. Okay, so this slide is my attempt to say we, the tennis club, really feel we need to have diversity at each site, south, north. Doug Lorenz right here wrote his opinion on, that states it pretty well, of what we want. We want, it's reasonable for people in the south to go up to Bell. That's what I do every day when I play tennis, but it's 15 to 20 minutes each way for me to do that. So it'd be really nice to be closer, and I think that's reasonable to have more swimming, more pickleball, more lawn bowling. We got 4 lawn bowl, and so having just 1 tennis court facility.
One quick comment.
Yeah.
I wrote a position statement, but basically balance, I know you're trying to decide what you want to do with Mountain View. If Mountain View becomes a center with predominantly pickleball, should have a couple tennis courts to handle the people who live in this area. A a lot of tennis players have to come up to our, Bell.
Yeah.
And that's our premium site.
Yeah.
And I think you need to address the people who live down in this area.
So here, my slide here is to say that we are happy to help find places to build pickleball courts and leave tennis courts at Mountain View and Lakeview. Go ahead, next slide. I actually found 10 sites, and there's more there, of places which could house pickleball and or tennis courts. The biggest one is this first one, adjacent to Union Hills Country Club Golf Course, east of 99th Avenue between Bell and Union Hills, about a half a mile or a mile away from Marinette Pickleball Center.
Right.
There is space for a ton
Sure is.
of pickleball courts. And in fact, when I went on the west side, I discovered 3 tennis courts that are not being played on. They have nets on 2 of them, and the third one is just a court, and nobody's playing there. It really is run down. They have new owners, so there's a possibility of working something with them. I reached out to them, and I haven't got a call back.
Is that RCSC property?
No. It's
No, this is a purchase.
it would be a purchase or rent. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. So that's something to look at. Additional courts at Marinette, 6 to 10. Apparently there's space there that some people believe that you could put more courts at Marinette. I was not aware of that, but Dennis of the Long Range Planning is saying that there is a place to do that. And the next one, the number 4. Number 4, empty dirt area north of the softball diamond on the Sunbolt property is 250 feet from the parking lot to the fence, to the neighborhood fence, the brick fence there, and 175 feet from the right field fence to the fence. So there's a 200 feet by 250 foot, and it even extends further, that could be used, except that it's used as drainage right now, and you'd have to consider ways of putting it on stilts, building above the drainage, but there's something to consider. So these are just, we don't need to go through all of these, but there are spaces for pickleball, and one of the questions that I asked pickleball people were, do you want only 2 or 3 pickleball facilities that have 15 to 20 courts on there so that you have more sociability with it, or where could you have the Marinette and maybe a Mountain View, and then have a number of little ones, smaller ones, 4, 3, 2, dispersed throughout Sun City that could be built? Would the recreational player, like me, I mean, I played it a few times, but I don't need to go to Marinette to play, or Mountain View even. I would just play anywhere. So, next slide. In fact, one of those I actually approached a friend of mine who plays softball with me, who was the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, and I told him, hey, we're looking for possible places, and I noticed you had a lot of parking space. He said, yeah, we'll sell it to you. So he was willing, just like that, willing to consider selling us some property on his parking lot at his church. Okay, do not give up tennis courts, rather help find additional space. That's, I guess, the key point. Perform maintenance on courts, including cleaning courts on a scheduled basis, and we already talked about Mountain View hadn't been. Ideas for retractable covering for 3 or 4 courts at Bell Tennis Center. One of our members has got this idea of retractable court, so that's kind of a dream pie in the sky. But so next. All right. So we haven't done. I've been president of the club for 6 months, and frankly, we were coming out of COVID, and I was new in the area. I've been here 3 years, so we haven't done a lot of promoting tennis in the area. We haven't got a lot of traction on independent and other, and we can do better at that. But beginning an intermediate tennis lessons, I would bet you that there are tennis players in here, and I bet you there are tennis players that would, or people that would want to play tennis if they had you know, a coach or they'd like to pick it up. My neighbor across the street and my wife are now picking up tennis, but there are probably a lot more that would. There is something about tennis. I don't know for sure, but I'm hearing that pickleball, there's a lot of bending, and you're doing this a lot, and there's a lot of injuries apparently, and I don't understand it totally, but there's injuries in tennis, but I'm not so sure that there's many. So in the end, let's make this a win-win, and I think we can keep tennis courts and have a cooperative effort with pickleball. And okay, the next slide. Conclusion, a modified option 1B, similar to the one that Susan presented last week, would meet the interests of the tennis club, especially if we get a climate-controlled facility. That would be awesome. That would be a wow for attracting people to Sun City for pickleball and tennis. The tennis club will assist in searching, and we already talked about that. Let's win-win and wow. Questions?
Dave, I'm really intrigued about the softball
Yeah.
of land.
Yeah.
Would it, I don't, 250 feet means nothing to me.
Oh.
I'm spatial thing.
Okay.
But
A tennis
could we
court.
build a pickleball court, indoor court there?
Easily.
And then use the Mountain View space for the gymnasium that we were talking about, or something else?
Yes, you could. The space at the ball field would fit probably 8, 10 pickleball playing field, not the lines. The playing field is 30 feet wide and 64 feet. So 250 feet is like eight pickleballs going this way. Yeah, it could be big.
I mean, that may be very intriguing, and there's plenty of parking there.
Yeah, there's plenty of parking,
So
right?
you don't have to worry about that now. I don't know what the drainage thing is.
That's a major
The-
thing. Those
the-
are
the dr-
questions.
Yeah,
the
but that's on a
drainage-
site we already own.
Yes, and
That's
the
just sitting there.
the drainage would be an issue of building,
Maricopa
know-
County will have a say about that.
well, of course,
Yeah, you have
of
to-
course they
yeah,
would.
you have to get that
can be
approved.
done.
It's a 9-acre site there.
Yes.
If you were to build a canopy over some pickleball courts and or tennis courts, how tall would that canopy have to be?
Substantial.
That's a good question.
How you for tennis?
For the pickleball club, they actually have regional pickleball tournaments.
Right. In the one they
So,
got.
so they would have to have high awnings for those. But my question to the pickleball community was, how many of our Sun City residents are playing in the tournaments? And how many of our pickleball facilities could have a lower ceiling or an awning over it? And I mean, when I play pickleball, I'm not hitting it way up there, I'm hitting this way. And I might hit trying to get over somebody, but it's not 20 feet up in the air.
Tennis is substantially higher.
Tennis is much higher. Yes, Dave from pickleball.
I don't talk very often, but Dave and I got together and had about a 2.5 hour meeting. And there's a lot of talk about improving the courts at Mountain View, because we just want 2 centers of pickleball, so that they're not going everywhere. And as far as the tournament situation and stuff like that, we really do lots of, and I'm sure tennis does the same thing, round robins or ladders or things like that. And the number of courts required is more than the 7 that exist at Mountain View. So the idea was just to increase one place and not have the other.
Yeah.
It's really curious, though, that you came up with places that you could have casual courts.
Yeah, that was
That's a
key
whole
to what I
other
was
ballgame.
doing, because I thought that the extra demand of the casual player would dissipate the requirement for places that, you know, playing at
That's
Marinette and
another
at
whole
Mountain View.
thing.
Yeah,
It's curious.
and in that way we could keep tennis. Any other questions?
Just a comment,
Yes.
another comment. Our biggest tennis crowd is in the wintertime, when all the winter visitors come.
Like
It's
everyone.
packed,
Just like
every court
pickleball
is,
and everything.
in the morning is used, and then it fades off, you know. Even playing in the winter, in the sun, in the afternoons, it gets pretty hot.
It can be.
So some kind of a device to cover one or two courts would
Yeah,
be beneficial.
covering.
And same for pickleball.
Yeah.
May I say two things? One, to answer the question that was asked earlier,
Ladies.
Vintage vehicle is 2,400 square foot space wise, and it's used for storage right now. That's the purpose it's serving basically. In terms of the tennis / pickleball, the words that were said were we were going to convert the tennis courts at Lakeview into pickleball courts, which sounds pretty simplistic. But to get what's really needed out of that process, and I'm not sure everyone knows this, is, you could convert X courts from tennis to pickleball. But to get the X number that is desired here would require taking the grassway next to the tennis courts all the way up to the first tee of the mini golf. I just wanted people to be aware of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if they went beyond the 4 courts, 4 times 4 is 16 pickleball courts.
We couldn't fit them in that.
Couldn't, because those courts are smaller than the average?
Yes.
Okay.
There
All
needed
right.
to be additional space.
Okay.
And by the way, the RCSC approached us about that.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions?
That should be good.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Good.
much. Okay, now we have a conundrum,
Yeah.
a problem.
No, that's Bill.
That's
Yeah.
15.
You're gonna have to make a decision, Bill.
Can you do it in 15?
We've got less than 20 minutes. Are
Okay.
you comfortable doing
want
this
this?
now, or next week?
No, I can do it.
Before we do
No,
that,
Bill,
folks
Bill.
said they were willing to stay.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
already said we'd extend.
I'll go over a little bit, don't hang.
I am willing to stay.
Okay.
I know
When I
that you
get
have
to
to
the point,
leave, so I'm willing to
Okay.
stay.
I'll tell you when.
Okay, so
How do you work this thing?
take what you need, Bill.
You don't. Tell him to advance the slides for you.
I know, but how do you do the?
The top thing, the
The
little
top.
arrow, or the, no,
Here, Bill.
Well, this is worse than my remote.
no, it's just that little line. That's the pointer, that's the pointer.
Okay, okay. You've heard from other people about having various things at multiple locations. We only have one location for the Performing Arts Center, and we've been there for 60 years, and a lot of people are wanting to take it away. It belongs at Mountain View, and it goes along with what Norm's thinking. If we put everything at Mountain View, that leaves an open slate for Lakeview to build a really fantastic center that is only for Norm's suggestions. With that in mind, with that in mind, Mountain View, we're entertaining Sun City residents. It's not just for us. We go out into the community and we entertain, and in a year's time, there'll be over 20,000 people that see various things at Mountain View. There's music, and we can have music, dance, movies, stage, meetings, lectures, education, storytellers, pageants, and more. Next slide. This is what was proposed and put on hold. It's a beautiful building. It would really make a big impression in South, where the homes aren't as good as they are up in Phase 3. And maybe people would do more remodeling if they saw that.
Picking on my house.
Next slide, please.
He just lost me.
This is our competition. This is Robeson at Saddlebrook, their Performing Arts Center. 488 comfortable seats. Note, 6 wheelchair seats in 2 locations.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah, that's not good.
Sun City, Hilton Head, Hilton Head, South Carolina. 550 comfortable seats. 8 wheelchair seats, 2 locations. And this was built in 1999, and they still haven't sold all the houses there yet. And they've had a performing arts center that long, and they're much, much newer than we are,
Yeah.
which is sad. Next location. This is the Stardust Theater that we're not in competition with. A lot of people have heard time and time again, you want a theater just like Stardust. No, we don't. Because the Stardust Theater is too small. It doesn't have any room between the front row of seats and the stage to put a band or an orchestra for music. By their own thing, you saw a presentation when people came back from seeing that they said, and this is the Sun City people said, they need more space on the sides for sets. They need more space back for set construction, and they have off-location storage now. So there's a lot of things that are wrong with that. And so why would we build one that's got problems to begin with? I wouldn't do it. Next slide. This is the seating chart for Stardust Theater. See how close it is to the stage. But up here, and I know you can't read it because it's red and black lettering. I even had to get out a magnifying glass to read it myself. But what it says is, for those two red locations on either side of the back of the auditorium, wheelchair, folding chair. So their ADA seating is an open space for a wheelchair and a folding chair for their companion. Next slide, please. And you've heard time and time again, 3 different presentations were given that said, don't build a theater over 300 seats. You hear it long enough, you believe it.
Yeah.
Okay? There's nothing wrong with building them. I see all these big theaters and how do they do it? So I do a little research. And I urge every one of these committee members, if there's something that you say, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Do your own research. Go out and check it out. Be informed. Because we have a big task ahead of us. And there's no sense of doing it on bad information. This is the chart right out of the 2010 ADA standards. 150 to 300 seats, you need 5 spots. 301 to 500, you need 6. Now, if we can't afford an extra wheelchair spot, then there's something wrong. So that is bad information. And this is directly from the government that regulates it. So, and that's what I urge everybody to also do. If you're going to make a statement, have the documentation to prove it. Next slide, please. It's been said that this is only for the players. And it's not. For years, we've been in contact with all of the performing arts centers, or performing art clubs. 2 years ago, we had a coffee and donut thing where we invited all the other clubs to get what they wanted in a performing arts center. And it was a very good meeting, and we formed a Performing Arts Council. Next slide, please. These are all of the clubs that attended. So you can see it's not just for players. There's a lot of different things. You combine all of those clubs and how many people they entertained, and you're willing to give that up for something. Next slide, please. To fly or not to fly, that is a question. Everybody's so upset because a fly is expensive, the building's too high, all kinds of different things. Next slide, please. Can we get along without a fly? Certainly. Hell, we've got along with nothing for 60 years. But it would be nice to have, but if it's a deal breaker, it can be deleted. We can live without it. What we can't live without is a place to perform.
Bill, could you tell me what a fly is? I'm sorry, I'm so naive.
A fly is something that's backstage that goes straight up, that you have sets and
Oh, they can just
it
drop
just
down.
drop down and lift it back up. But that makes the building 54 feet high.
Oh,
But if that were the case, we would need more space on the wings. And wings are the side of the stage, in case you don't know what those are, for sets. And Wednesday, I met with the tip-top dancers and the Palms to see what their recommendations were for Performing Arts Center. And lo and behold, we agree on a lot of it. Some of the things they need more than we do, or bigger than we do. And that needs to be taken into consideration. And one thing I've learned from listening to all these other people talk, what we need to do is decide if we're going to do something, but then let the people that know and the architects figure it out. We don't need to know the temperature of the water, for instance. It doesn't matter to us, but it matters to them. But people that know that, it's not up to us to decide all that stuff. We're just supposed to decide what we want, where we want it, and then go from there. Next slide. That's all, folks. One other thing I forgot. For those that, lest you forget the seating arrangement or rules, I made copies.
I'm landing on a lot more space for yeah, so the ramp is how you fly. That's what lengthens it's not the number of seats. It's the wheelchairs. That's why I put in a wheelchair ramp. It's really walk with it to that.
But if you roll down.
Well, I have a front end. I have a front end. I put something back. I want to talk to you. My comments were, you took something wrong when I said before. I didn't count the number of spaces. It's the ramp, so I can get wheelchair turning down from there.
Bill, are you up for taking some questions?
Yes,
That's what you should be answering.
Okay.
Who's got a question?
I do.
Okay.
Where would you, your club, where would you like to see this go? Do you want to see it stay at Mountain View? Do you want it for Lakeview? Do you want it totally different sites? Where would you guys actually like to
Definitely
go?
Mountain View,
Like it.
because that's where we've been for all these years, and we're in Sun City, people know where it is. You move it, they make misses. But the other thing, if you remember a few meetings back, Susan's presentation, with a little finesse, you could get everything you want at Mountain View. Yeah. And that was such a great presentation, and to move things around and get everything in, that's what we need to focus on. We have to let Lakeview be open for whatever goes there, but if you try to get this there and that there and this there, then you're defeating the purpose. All of a sudden, you've got a beautiful lake that's trashed with a bunch of stuff.
I think the pack belongs at Mountain View. We need to get something on that end of town.
Yes.
We can't be chasing everybody north all the time. There's a lot of people down there. It belongs there.
Any other questions?
Any questions?
It's not a question, I think it's a misunderstanding. The reason for ADA compliance wasn't the number of seats for wheelchairs and that, it's the distance it takes to allow the ramp up for people to use coming down with wheelchairs or using aids. That's why I was trying to be really crystal clear about that. So it extends the size of the building. That's what I'm talking about for the number of seats. It's the building shape and size. It's not the number of seats.
If you look at the one that's at the back room over at the SAC building, that has a ramp floor, and it's already all there. All you have to do is build it.
Designed to do.
You're talking about to be designed?
No.
Option 2B.
The option one of the theater it's compliant the way it was designed. So it doesn't cost any more, it doesn't change anything. You know, so it's just,
Hey, don't everybody shoot me, I'm new to the program.
okay, that's all right.
And I don't know Plan 1 from Plan 2 to what we're doing here today.
True, that's okay.
What was, just don't shoot me, what was wrong with the Plan 1? Why did it not go? I don't understand.
There was
There's
concern
two
about,
plans already.
there was concerns about parking and also being able to have enough ADA parking spots for handicap. And to have a way to drop people off at
And
the
is
door.
that still a problem?
Security also.
Right, security was a problem.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that that's where it belongs.
Question
Question
over
way
in the
down
corner.
there, Bill.
I live less than a mile from Mountain View. Since I moved here 4 years ago, I've been there every play they put on with the players. It's 3 times a year. And 1 year they canceled 1 or 2 of them. I even let them keep the money. It's that cheap. The productions are good enough, I go. And if that theater was at Bell, I go. For 3 nights a year, or 3 matinees a year, I go to Bell, I go to Lakeview. Being in Mountain View isn't the reason that I see. It's a question of, every time I go to that center, I don't know what is being done inside that building, other than when they're doing plays and they're doing their rehearsals for a period before it. So I look at it as something that it's 3 nights or 3 days. And so you can sit there and say 20,000 people go, but they're going 3 nights a year. They're not going on a regular basis like people who go to a pool.
Not 3 nights.
So, and you have the music rooms over at Fairway, and apparently they do some of the performance, some of the music clubs do things there. They use
Do you have a question?
sundials. So,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying,
But it's
I
not-
don't agree with your assessment, and it's interesting because that's the first time I've seen all the places that, do they actually use it right now?
Yeah, it's not just 3
Let's
nights.
not get off track, we're getting off track again,
No, okay.
okay?
But to answer his question real quick, it's not just 3 nights. It's 3 shows, 7 nights each show, so it's 21. But it is also, 6 weeks ahead of each one that we rehearse so that we can put on a decent show.
And all those different clubs that you showed.
Mhm.
Those are the books.
Those are the clubs that could be using it if it was a better and newer and bigger and better
There's a
facility.
question.
So if you're reserving it for 6 weeks per show, plus 3 weeks of performances, you're talking 9 weeks, so now you're saying 27 weeks, half a year. The only people that use that building at that point, because of the rehearsals and the performances, is the players. Is that correct?
No.
No.
Did you see the other 10 performing arts clubs?
Well, when do they get to go in there? I mean, is it exclusive?
It'll be a scheduled thing.
We're way off track here, folks, we're way off track here.
Yeah, I have a question because I would like to see the Performing Arts Center built at Mountain View. I would like to see it built. I'm not sure why the whole thing has to be redone just to build. I think you should concentrate on that building. Now, parking. Has anyone considered, rather than just street parking, a layered parking? Has that ever come up? You could do a 2-story, a 3-story parking, or a 2-story parking with pickleball courts on top. Does anybody, why isn't that coming up? Too expensive? Because everything else is expensive, everybody else in the country
Ma'am, thank you
has.
for your comments, okay?
I'm asking if they considered it.
Yes, they have. They've considered a large number of us. You've been here for the entire process, and the process is going to go on for many weeks to come.
Any more questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kill it.
What?
Kill it.
You need to leave. I'm supposed to get up here?
I'm only 2 minutes
Oh,
over.
yes,
Get
I
up and
know.
leave.
It's okay.
Taking care of you, Gene.
You made a promise to the husband.
That's probably your husband.
Gene,
Waiting for my
Is there anybody online that wanted to ask a question?
I don't
You
know,
never gave
I
them a
thought I
chance.
heard somebody speak. Is there
I
someone
heard John.
online that
Somebody
wanted
online
to
might
ask
wanna
a
speak.
question?
They're calling.
It's,
She's got to say, but you're,
Maybe
hold on.
it's
He didn't know what
Dan
that
Haberman. Dan, what do you want? I'm on stage.
Is there another presentation, Jean?
No.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the
No.
presentation. What
No.
can I help you with? Can I hang up?
Bill was the last one.
That was Mr. Pickleball, I'm sorry.
Maybe he'll call back. why not?
Gene, could I make the announcement about turning phones off next time?
I forgot to do that.
It's in
Hey,
my-
Dan must be calling for a question. Dave can get a hold of him right now.
Dan had a question is what we're thinking.
He probably had a question.
About the presentation.
Oh, well, no, he said, I didn't know you were, well, whatever.
We're done.
Well, he can get a hold of him right now.
Are we done?
I guess we're done.
This is a copyrighted production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.